Okay, so we're going to see in Reish Aleph more of the technicalities that apply to the building, actual construction of a mikveh. As we progress, we will see more of the details of what can render a mikveh puzzle. We've spoken a little bit about the mikveh versus a mayan, and we're already somewhat familiar with what mayim she'ulim, a little bit about how one can connect a mikveh with another body of water through something called shvoferet hanod, a certain hole that would enable waters to go from one place to another. We also spoke a little bit about shacha, which we'll see, where you can take the water and have it run onto the ground. And even though it may have she'uvim at one time, it could somehow be repaired, if we can repaired, to render those waters no longer she'uvim. However, an important detail to keep in mind, we'll speak about it later, is that it's important that a mikveh haviyosam, that the actual formation in the first place be done right. And I say in the first place because later on, once a mayan is kosher, even if you were to dump a lot of mayim she'uvim onto it, it would not necessarily take away. Waters can be ruined, even though there's enough water in the mikveh, MCO, by discoloration. So there's other ways that a mikveh can become useless. But sometimes it could be repaired, and sometimes you have to start from scratch. You don't know what the problem is. So we spoke about the differences between a mayan as far as the maila that ordinarily a mayan would have that be metayar the kol shehu. A little bit, it does not require the 200 gallons or so. When I say 200 gallons, it's just an estimate of various sheets of just all is. But another important difference is that a mikveh is metayar only b'ashavoyim, that the waters have to be sitting, whereas a mayan are bezoichalin, as the waters are flowing. And all of this makes a world of a difference in building a kosher mikveh, aware of. Just a brief review of what we did last time, and that is in the If Yud Gimel, we were talking about a mayan that instead of flowing, it came out drop by drop, tipping. So we said how Chachamim disqualified or say that this type of a mayan, even though it starts off as a mayan, the fact that it's coming tipping, can only be as good as a mikveh. In order for it to have the milas, advantages, the benefit of a mayan, it would have to be big. It would have to be flowing. That was Sif Yud Gimel. Siman Reish Aleph. So that was a brief halacha that in such a situation you would need, in other words, ashborin, you would MCO, because such waters would not constitute mei mayan in respect, which means it would not be even kosher for a zav or mitzvah, where you need mayim chayim too. However, right away in Sif Yud Daled we see a suggestion on how to transform the noitfim into zoichalin, how to take waters that have been dripping, repair them, or to make them into what they were supposed to be, and that is flowing. And that is by putting a plank, a tabla. A tabla is sort of plank, as long as it's of cheres, which means it's not mikabel tuma, a flat surface, and in this way causing the noitfim to be zoichlin. So then they're shaded. But as the Mechaber finishes up saying that if it's a davar shel mikabel tuma, even if it's mikabel tuma in divrei seifrim and maschil, you're not mas. In other words, you cannot go ahead and use this technique to bring about zoichlin over here. What's interesting about this is that later on the Sif Mem Ches, when it speaks about the concept of haviyosna lidei tahara, that something should be in the first place through tahara, the Shach brings down over there regarding the halacha of whether klisha mekabel tuma will make a difference or not. And he mentions that if the waters would come on their own, even without the use, without the benefit of that keli, that even though it's mekabel tuma, it is as though it was not there. It did not really do anything. It did not contribute towards the water's flow or the bringing of the water to the mikveh. Even though it's mekabel tuma, but since it could have gotten to the mikveh without the use of the keli, so we ignore it. So even though that's true over there, here we see it does make a difference, because the Mechaber is very emphatic that it has to be davar is not mikabel tuma. Why is that so? So last time we didn't get into this, but it's an important point because what are we accomplishing here and what are we accomplishing there? There it's a simple hamshacha of water into a mikveh, whereas here we're trying to accomplish something called zoichalin. We're trying to take the waters that are noitfim, and to be machshir them, that they should have the attributes of zoichalin, to be able to be used as even as mayim chayim. In this kind of a situation, you cannot use a klisha mekabel tuma. In other words, what this tavla accomplishes is to render this mayim zoichalin. To do that kind of a level of tahara, the technique has to be that it's a tavla she'ena mekabel tuma. In other words, in no way will we allow that the medium should be a davar shemekabel tuma. Even though later on we see that it may not make a difference. So okay, leave it alone. The waters would have gotten there anyway. No, over there, all we were trying to accomplish is amshaka. So if the waters can get there anyway, the Shach says, we would ignore that davar shemekabel tuma. But for our din, that the kli is being beneficial, that this tabla is helping it, that this waters, this notion should be zoichalin, and to be like mayim chayim, in this case, therefore, if what's causing the waters to be zoichalin is actually mekabel tuma, it's possible. In other words, we would not allow it in this situation here. However, the Shach explains later on that even in such a situation, the waters would still be kosher, the Torah's mikveh, because it's not any worse than if it's, as we saw before, that noithim coming from a mayan, dripping, it at least is considered a mikveh. It may not have the benefits of a mayan. So same thing over here. If it was a davar shemekabel tuma, then ultimately it may help for the waters to be a mikveh, but it would lose the benefits of being a mayan. Okay, now we're on to Seif Tesavot. This is really a big seif. We'll just focus on it, a little bit of a long seif. Basically, there are two dinim here, even though there's a few more additional details in seif, but the basic dinim here are in discussing a mikveh that is already kosher, and has the required amount of rainwater, or a mayan, having the required amount of water, and there are those that hold that a mayan does need 40 se'of l'tbilas odom. As the Mechaber points out, remember in the very beginning of Aleph, he holds that a woman comes out of her tumah only if she's toivel her entire body bebasar at once the main mikveh or mayan sheyesh bohem mem se'ah 40 se'ah. That shira is of course dependent on typical mikveh that has at the variances of amma al rum sholosh amos, approximately that these are the dimensions which would contain the mem se'ah. There can be a body of water that does not have these dimensions but has the mem. She would have to be flat inside on the ground in order for the waters to completely cover her. So, in talking about that, we said that it comes out to close to 200 gallon take. We're machmer today. So, that's one thing the Seif Tesavot discusses about. A mayan or a mikveh that already have the required amount of water, that she'uvim, waters that cannot usually be used, waters that have been drawn in a vessel, cannot affect or ruin this mikveh because it already has the minimal amount. You can add tap water, which is, by the way, what is done. Otherwise, you would be in trouble. If everybody dipped egeshamim, or as it's called in the bor, in tank or pit, is the rainwater. Even if you had a filter, eventually you would run out of rainwater unless you have an endless amount of supply of rainwater. It's not a good idea for you to dip in the actual. So even though mikvahs are built slightly different, Chabad has their own sheet and so forth, there's a lot of chumras today to make it as best as possible according to all the sheetas. You will find that you have a hole where the waters are being noishik, connect through the tap water with the rain, in order to continuously render this water in the mikveh kosher, make it rainwater. But you're not dipping, whether it's a man or a woman, in the actual rainwater. Otherwise, That's what happens. It gets dirty. Even you would have to replace all the time. That would be very difficult. So it can be done. It can be done that one does not in the original water, but in the water that is connected. So once you have the required amount, that's pretty much the idea here. You can add. You can take from the faucet. You bring with the bucket, mayim she'uvim, and dump it as much as you want, even if it will eventually be more than the mem se'ah. That's okay. It will be kosher. So this halacha applies to mikveh and a mayan that have the required amount. We'll talk a little bit about that required amount in a mayan. Mikveh, we know, is simple, but mayan supposedly learned that it's mitar b'kosher. It's only that some say that for tzilas adam you need 40 sah. So will it make a difference if you pour a lot of mayim she'um into a mayan or not? So the first halacha has to do with you have the required amount. The second halacha has to do with something called shloisha lugin, shenoflu, that fell into a mikveh that did not have as yet the 40 se'ah. Now all of this is taken from Mishnayos and Mikvaot, so it's good to learn from time to time. Very interesting Masechta. What happens if orange juice? All kinds of halachas like that. What if it's snow? What if it's ice? What if it changes the color, or hail and the like. Are they all considered water? So that's all discussed in the Mishnayos. But the halacha of gimel lugin goes like this: if the mikveh is not at 40 se'ah yet, it's missing. A lug is about approximately a pint. Yeah, you're familiar with that. So if it's missing, it's just under 40 se'ah, it's missing shloisha lugim, and you pour shloisha lugim, this mikveh, you've lost out on 2 counts. Number one, not only did the 3 mayim she'uvim did not complete 40 se'ah, now they actually ruined the entire water that was there in the mikveh. It is as though now the whole water is mayim she'uvim, which is an interesting point which we'll get in a moment. How does that work? So that's the din of gimel lugin. She'uvim, prior to the mikveh being 40 se'ah, as we said before. If there is already 40 se'ah or more, you can pour as much as you want. Water, regular water, mayim she'uvim, and it will not disqualify the mikveh. But if you have less, and 3 lugim fell in, you're in trouble. So how do these 3 lugim fell in? That's part of what Steve does. It can happen in all kinds of ways. All right. The Rosh explains that when you have mayim she'uvim entering a mikveh that already contains the required amount, what is really happening? What's happening is that the mayim she'uvim are being sown or sowed into the waters of the mikveh. In other words, it's called zriya. When the mayim she'uvim come into the mikveh, you have an ashaka between them. They become zruim, as though they have been sowed into the mei hamikveh, and they become like the mei hamikveh. They are transformed, just like mayim tmeim. Somehow, when you put them into the mikveh, those mayim that were tamim become mayim tehorim as a result of combining or fusing, which term would be more appropriate for water.
Combining.
Yes, yeah, obviously, yeah. It's a whole different thing. So they will become one. They become as one, and we see from the Mishnah in Mikvaot another idea that mayan, that robo olav she'uvim, in other words, you put more she'uvim than what was there in the mayan, it loses a little bit of its effect in that it becomes like a mikveh. That it's still metar, but it's metar bash boiren, not zoichalin, and no longer is it metar b'kol shehu. I'm sorry, that it has a combination effect, as some would call it. It has a din murkav. It's complex or compound. That it's like a mikveh, that it's bash boiren, no longer zochalin, but it's metar b'chol shehu. It still continues to be metar b'chol shehu. So here, even though you put more she'uvim into the mayan, didn't lose anything either, except that it's now more like a mikveh in some ways, that it's metar bash boiren. But it's still a little bit like a mayan, that it's metar b'chol shehu. And that's why some call it a din murkav. Part of it is like a mikveh, and part of it is like a... I saw that according to the Ran, it's not a din murkav. He holds that it all depends. If as a result of pouring so much mayim she'uvim into the mayan, it eventually takes over. The amount of water that's being poured can overflow and go into many locations. However, the waters where they originally lead, wherever the mayan is going, will always have a din of mayan. It's only the waters or the bodies of waters that are being formed as a result of the overflowing elsewhere, that's where it will have a din of a mikveh dashborin and then. So the Ran seems to learn that it's not a compound halacha of having so much shuvim in the mayan that now it's partially mikveh and partially mayan. It will always be a mayan if it's the waters going in that same direction that they were always headed, wherever the mayan was headed. Other waters that have been formed, other bodies that have been formed, that is where he holds that they would have a din of mikveh. All right, interesting. Another sheet on how you learn the waters, mayim she'uvim that overflowed or that became more voluminous than the original mayim. Okay, but getting back to the other point, mikveh or mayim that does not have a shear. And according to some of the Rishonim, a mayim that does not have mem se'ah is not kosher for tefillah sodom. So we're talking therefore, whether it's a mikveh or a mayim that do not, neither of them have 40 se'ah. And 3 lugim of water fell into it, of mayim she'uvim. So we said before, had they had the 40 se'ah, it wouldn't matter how much mayim she'uvim. But since they do not, there's different shittas amongst the Rishonim over here. So let's just talk about a mayan first, because that's where you have the shittas. The mayan does not have mem se'ah, and 3 lugim fell in. So according to the ones that say that a person is niddah b'mayan kol shehu, and he does not need 40 se'ah, well, that's easy. Then the mayan is not nifsal at all, the she'uvim. And it's exactly the same like a mikveh that has 40 se'ah. But that's only according to the ones that hold that an adam does not need in a mayan 40 se'ah. But what did we just say? The mechaber paskin, like those sheets, that a mayan is pretty much like a mikveh in the required amount for tefillas adam. For tefillas adam, you need 40 se'ah. So what's going to be the halacha with gimel lugim? So then this is a machlekes Rishonim too. The more that he brings the Ram Bar Chizdoi, interesting opinion here, that a mayan is nifsal b'she'uvim l'gabe tefillas adam, and the more that he himself, after he quotes him, says, I don't understand. That even though it's true that there are some that hold that an adam requires 40 se'ah in a mayan, why would 3 lugim make a difference in a mayan? It shouldn't be the same like with a mikveh, that if you don't have the 40 se'ah, the 3 lugim would make it possible. Why? Because a mayan is still okay for tefillas kelim. Right? For tefillas adam you need 40 se'ah, but a mayan is still okay, still kosher to tefillas kelim. And therefore, if all the she'uvim fell in, it would be metaher, the she'uvim. It's a very good question. In other words, why should the she'uvim make any difference in a mayan if that mayan is really pretty good, pretty effective for kelim? So it should be metaher the she'uvim. And later on we'll see mem that me'ikar adin you can be meiko, that a mayan is not nifsal b'di'evet. A mayan will not be nifsal b'di'evet b'she'uvim. Unless it's not a big deal and you can repair the place, make it so that you have the required amount without the she'uvim. If it's not a big deal, then you should do it. You should be. But b'di'evet, there's no reason to be concerned in a mayan. So that's the din by mayan. Good point. Why not? You could be metar the waters in a mayan. You know, just like a mikveh. If you have the 40 se'ah, you bring mayim she'uvim, the mikveh is now metar the mayim she'uvim. And with a mayan, to be metar mayim she'uvim, you can do it without the 40 se'ah. Yes, okay, we hold that an adam needs 40 se'ah even in a mayan. Okay, fine. But the 3 lugim problem shouldn't really be a problem, the more that he says. So that's a machlokes Rishonim on how or if it would affect, if there would be any problems with 3 lugim falling into a mayan that does not yet have the 40 se'ah. With a mikveh, we know that if you don't have the gimel lugim, if you don't have the mem se'o, gimel lugin will passel the mikveh. What's this gimel lugin all about? Tosfos brings down that that's a shear of water that has a certain importance because it's ra'ui lerechitzat adam. The man somehow washing himself with that amount of water. So it's a shear chashuv. That's what's brought down in Tosfos. So from the Mishnah, it's very clear that 3 lugin not only does not complete the 40 se'ah, now the entire body of water that used to be kosher, puzzle. What do you say? Interesting, no? Does this remind you of anything in Yore Deah? What happens now that you added the 3 lugin and you have 40 se'ah? So it's not kosher. The whole thing is puzzle. Can you now add 3 lugin of mayim ksherim, whatever, to undo the damage? So I saw the Ran brings down the Ramban. The Ramban actually learns Hanan from this din of Gimel lugin. See, when we were learning Hanan, remember Hanan, the famous Hanan, Chaticha Nasas Nevela? We would not maybe have understood what's Gimel lugin, because Hilchos Mikvaot. We know more or less how it works, how the whole piece, the whole Chaticha becomes Nevela, and you cannot easily undo it. So the Ramban learns the din of Hanan in Issa v'Heter from the din of Gimel lugin in a mikveh. So what's the comparison? That these 3 lugin make the whole body of water that's there puzzle. It was kosher, and because of these 3, everything is puzzle. Interesting. And what does it mean, puzzle? Okay, let's undo it. No. Puzzle means that it remains puzzle even if you try now to add kosher water. That's what the problem is. It's not only that it rendered the waters puzzle, is that they remain puzzle even if you try to undo it now by adding kosher water.
So let's see if I understand it. Then we have a chiddush. If it's for to saw, that's like a body armor. And then we go back and we say, but if it wasn't for, then 3 lugin would make.
Right.
So really, we started out with this concept that it could become possible if you mixed the kosher into it.
Right.
Which was that there is actually one state, or sa'ah, that prevents it from happening.
That's correct.
So the absence of the state will not prevent it.
Yeah.
After you
After
it's when the water latchila has the ability to cure.
Yeah.
So afterwards, it's no longer a miracle that if that state prevents it from being kosher, that in fact it will become unkosher because that was your premise to not a big chiddush.
Yeah, no, but the chiddush right now is that even, let's say you were to take out, even if you were to take out, water, when you dip in the water, by the way, you come in, you come out, people come in and out, the water's nechsorim, the water's, they become, so here, you can intentionally remove some of the water,
or
whatever, or unintentionally, right? It would still remain, and when you remove water, you're removing some of those shloisha lugim too. It still remains the bisuloi and repair it. But the Ran says,
it wasn't just the lugim that were in mikvah. All the water that
lost its status. Exactly.
So now you're no longer dealing with.
You don't accomplish anything.
You're dealing with 3 lugim plus whatever water was there. That's not possible.
But the Ran says something very interesting. He says, I don't see any way of learning Hanan from this for the following reason. By Hanan, we do have the concept of Beetle. 60 Zaysim, can be Mevatel, the other Zayit.
You're 40 saw, they're 60. So.
Yeah, 60 Zaysim of Heter can be Mevatel, the Kazayis Isser. By Gimel lugin, it wouldn't help you, because the mikveh will always remain, no matter how much water later on you put in. You don't have the concept of Beetle.
You retroactively Mevatel the whole piece of it.
Right.
Is that what you say? If that whole piece now falls into code 60 times as much meat,
right.
Or because the Baruch will be
right. In Hanan, we have the concept of Beetle. Forget about that piece itself.
That's what I'm saying. That piece itself didn't change.
Okay.
Just no longer has the power to usher the other piece.
That's the idea. In Hanan, we have a concept of Beetle. Here we don't have. So the Ran says, you can't really learn.
Why, if you now take the water from the Melicha, that's Basar, where there's 40 saw of kosher.
So
that's what you're doing over there. When you take that's Hanan, and you move 2 other pieces.
Not really.
No. Yes, because
here we're talking about the apostle is here. For that this apostle, and you're bringing in water to mevatel it. You're not taking the. You're right. At some point, somehow, we will see What if you were to transfer all this puzzle
water
into a kosher mikveh or
Right.
maya? Then you wouldn't have a problem.
Exactly.
But that's not exactly example. By Hanan or by the treif, you have.
It doesn't matter if you're adding the treif to the kosher
Right,
treif. You
right.
can add it either way.
Either way.
Fine.
Yeah.
So that's a special thing by Hanan.
Right.
By mikvah, there's a special that wasn't
Right.
working. Besides that, by water you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, by Hanan also, even if you're going to take a piece of Hanan and add it,
Yeah.
if the kosher, as long as there's not enough in the kosher to Hanan,
Yeah.
the kosher is going to become Hanan. Now, when you're adding
Sure.
water to the mikvah, you're not adding 40 sides.
Yeah.
There's always a little bit of water that is added, so it has to fall in.
Sure. Anyway, the Shach adds, as far as the gimel lugin is, we're talking about whether the water, the gimel lugin, were there first in the mikveh, or whether they came in later. That the other waters were there, the kosher waters. Anyway, so it's very interesting diyun here as far as Hanan
But
can be
Hanan
compared.
is also something else. By Hanan is that you can't separate the two. Who is it that says it's possible to retroactively separate the two again?
Right, exactly.
And there wouldn't be a din of Hanan.
That's correct. Yeah. So anyway, getting back to what you said, the achronim are done in a situation where what would be the din if now a certain amount, even gimel lugin, of this non-kosher mikveh fell into another mikveh that doesn't have 40 sel. It's not exactly what you said, but it's similar. Your example was, what if they fell into 40 sel? It's kosher. But the Achronim discuss a very interesting thing. Imagine, these waters are now possible, we know. And it's like Hanan. But what if now you take 3 lugin of these waters that are no good and added to another mikveh that does not have 40 sel as yet? Are these considered shloisha lugim of mayim she'uv? Or they just consider shloisha lugim that came from a puzzle in mikveh? In other words, would they do the exact same thing to the second mikveh? Or not? Someone make. It's a little bit different, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Because here the whole mikveh became not fit as a result of the 3 lugim that are puzzle. Do we say the whole mikveh now is she'uvim? Not necessarily.
Turn it around. We say in order for to puzzle it has to move in, but you say in order to puzzle as long as that.
Exactly. Same thing. Very good. Yeah. What's exactly necessary? Okay. So before we read the seif inside, maybe just talk about one more point. And this is also again in the Mishnah that the Rishonim a choylek on a mikveh that was formed through waters that were brought with human hands. Let's say, as one example, no keli is involved. In his hands, he brought the water in his hand, and he put it in the mikveh. It's going to take him a little bit of time to do that.
It'd be easier if it was snow.
Yeah, the Raiva, the Rashba say that these waters are considered, doesn't have to be a bucket. And as we will soon see, this is very similar to waters that were absorbed into the jacket and later on squeezed. It would have a similar din, right? However, I saw that the Raiva's maskana, in discussing this din, he says that the waters that came about through the hands, it's not because of the psul of she'uvim. It's exeris akosu that we learned, we mentioned that earlier, that just like a mayan is b'shamayim, mikveh has to be b'dei shamayim, ground. So this is excluded because this came b'dei odom. And there would be a nafkamina if this would be a problem with gimel lugim, or I think that's one of the nafkaminas that they quote, depending on how you treat this, waters being brought with human hands, whether they would be considered like gimel lugim of mayim shu or not. Because there is a situation where she'uvim, she'chichuo, even she'uvim, that you brought them through hamshacha on the surface of towards the mikveh, you can render them unshe'uvim. You don't make the whole mikveh like that, but you can undo the status of she'uvim. After it was she'uvim, if you pour it on the floor, the concept called hamshacha, which we'll eventually get more into, on how that can be done, and it is done. Okay. That's called hamshacha. So that could be a nafkamina if this would be placed of the 3 logim or not, if it came about through human hands. That's pretty much what Sif Tezvav talks about. Let's look at it inside. Mikveh sheyesh bo arboim sa. So a mikveh that has 40 sa'ah, umayan kol shehu. He starts off with a mayan that has kol shehu, even a little bit. Yochol lishav kol ma sheyirtze litin letoicho vehem ksherim. You can bring mayim shuvim as much as he wants. What's there? And they're fine. They're ksherim. Even though they're greater in volume than the waters that were there from the very beginning. Because Yosef adds that there's no difference in this kind of a situation. Whether the mayim was before the shuvim or not. If the shuvim were there first, and then the mayim came, because the mayim would be betahar the shuvim. As it was already explained. Some are choilek on the din of mayim she'ubim. Kloima, the Shach explained, the Sham is by the yesh cholki, the mayim kol shehu she'im mem sof or says boshiva. There are opinions that a mayim kol shehu, that it doesn't have the 40 se'ah, mayim she'ubim would be poisel this mayim just like it would a mikveh. So there are an opinion that a mayan would also need 40 se'ah, and less than 40 se'ah, not only is it not good for tefillah, but 3 lugim would be poisel. Mayim she'ubim would be poisel of mayim. Okay, so there are some who are machmer of that. But once we have the required amount, according to all the days, then for sure you can add. As long as you don't have 40 se'ah in the mikveh, all you're missing is a little bit. If it's under 40 se'ah and you have 3 lugim, gimel lugim mayim shuvim, falling into this posluhu. So even if it's choser kol shehu, the mechaber is making. In other words, we're not saying that the mikveh is choser gimel. It's choser even a lugim. You need to have the minimal 40 se'ah, and then you can add. Loishno shalvan bekli. Now the mechaber adds it does not make a difference whether you actually drew the water with the bucket. Loishno seichet ksusoy higbiho, or that he was squeezing out his garment after he raised it from the water. And the water falls into the mikveh from all kinds of locations, even though it's not from all kinds of locations. It makes no difference. It's all one beged. So here he's medayik v'higviho, because so long as the beged is inside the mikveh, it's connected to the water. Even though it's coming in the beged is not a real kli. But as long, so it's not going to affect it. But once you pick it, you take it out from the water, and then it starts dripping back in. And what happened is you took enough water in your coat to diminish or reduce the amount of the mikveh to under the required 40 se'ah. So what's coming back down now will make it possible. So the Chaber adds, regardless of how the mayim she'uvim and the gimel lugim came back into the mikveh, if it was less than 40 se'ah, even if it was from seichet ksusoy, and the ksus was out of the water, and even if the water was noiflim in mekoy masarve. Now, without going further, or without learning the Mishnah inside, one would not understand what's the noiflim mekoy masarve. But it's talking about that even if it's not from one vessel or from one location, think that it's not mitzaref. You don't combine all of them. If it's coming from different locations, we're going to see that it is mitzaref. There are times that it is mitzaref. There are times it's not mitzaref. Because let's say you would have a lug fell in this morning, another lug fell in this afternoon.
So another lug.
Right. In order for it to be 3 lug, there is a certain requirement that we will see later in the Mechaber. But at first, when you read this, without seeing the Mishnah inside, it's hard to understand why is he saying the mayim shavon noiflim in mekoy masarbe. What different? He's quoting the Rambam. Or the second example would be bechena me'arim me'atzarzur. Tzarzur is like a keli that in the opening, the spout, it has like a strainer. You see, like they have for gardening also.
Yes.
So that's, the waters come out from various holes. That's a tzarzur. So the same halacha would apply to a me'arem me'atzarzur. One who pours out of tzarzur, therefore matil me'mekomot harbe letocho. And he's therefore he's pouring water from various spots. Or shezorkom bechofnov, or that he somehow threw the water in mikveh with his own bare hands. And now he explains, v'afilu noflu bo mishnei kelim or mishloisha, or whether they fell from 2 kelim or 3 kelim. Mizeh me'at, umizeh me'at, a little bit from this one. In other words, even though the 3 lugim are not coming from one source, mitztarfim, they can all combine to make 3 lugim. However, the big however, it's not so in every situation. When did we say that the 3 lugim coming from different places, even if they come from different places, would pass of the mikveh? Shematfil mikli habeis, ashelo posak mikli harishon. That before you finish pouring from the first one, you're already pouring from the second one. Like chain smoking. You know that's not an example, but you understand the idea. One after another.
No,
pretty much simultaneous.
There must be an overlap.
But it's not simultaneous.
But there has to be an overlap.
Overlap is better. Shematchem mikli habeis ad shelo posek mikli rishon. Aval im posek harishon. But if let's say you took a pause after you poured from the first one, kodesh sheitchel hasheni ein mitztarfim, then you cannot combine them. You know, you don't have the 3 lugim there. It has to have been that the 3 lugim pretty much came down into this mikveh almost at the same time. V'im hitchil habeis ad shelo posek harishon. And that which we said that yet you need an overlap, that the second one is starting to be poured before the first one finishes, this concept or this idea or this requirement is dafka when you have shloisha kelim, 3 cups, or 3 whatever. But once you have midalet, once you have 4 or more, ein mitztarfim, then you don't combine them. Then you have less than the loig for each one. So that doesn't count. But midalet ein mitztarfim, from 4 they would not be mitztarf altogether. If that's what you have, a little bit of water here, a little bit of another cup here, another cup here. That will not constitute between all of them together 3 lugim of Maim Shul would give you all this trouble. Let's hear what reason. First of all, who's he? Yeah, the what? No. That's another idea. That's another idea. Right now, all we said is that if you have more than 3, you have less than 1 lot per kli. They're not mitztaref. Bamed vor mamurim. I have one more requirement. The Mechaber says, even if you have 3, or I'm sorry, even in the case of 4, I'm sorry, even though I just said that the 4 will not be mitztaref, bamed vor mamurim sheme'arbo in mitztarefim. That's shelo hoyodato mitchilo litin kol hashloisha lugim. That's only if you did not intend to throw in all the 3 lugim pretty much at once. Shelo hoyodato mitchilo litin kol hashloisha lugim. Aval im mitchilo hoyodato, if you did intend to throw in all this water one after another, litin kol hashloisha lugim, afilu lo nosan elo me'at mikama kelim ma she'ishni migim lugim posol. If that's what your intent is, then even if you put it with more kalim until you make the gimel lugim, it's possible.
4 more?
Yeah. So now, that's what I told you that it's 4 or more. That's only if you didn't intend at one. In other words, to put it all into. But if you intend to put all this gimel lugim into this body of water, the number of kalim won't matter. That, in other words, that requirement of number of kalim will not make a difference.
How will somebody?
Obviously, we're talking about a situation where we know the facts are that, this is what happened. He says, I'm missing more lugim. Interesting.
But if he doesn't tell anything,
you know what's interesting? You know what this brings to mind is kiddush. And you want to fill up the cup, and it's not full of any more wine. You can have a little bit of water. That little bit of water is not going to dilute, hopefully, the cup of wine, and that's okay. It's not going to be okay. If you don't have the phone, you say, I remember in Kiddush, he's going to say, I could do it. Right. Yeah, no. So he's going to bring, but he doesn't have a big enough keli. He's going to bring a few cups. So his intent is to complete the mikveh, and that's going to give him trouble here. If that intent is there to the mikveh, even if it's arba kelim, they're going to be mitzdaref. The Ramah adds, Ve'im hive shloisha lugim b'yodov, al gabe karka. This is where he mentions here the concept of amshocha, but if he took these 3 lugim in his hand, that were in his hands, let them flow through the surface of the ground, or another example, which is also taken from Mishnah, shenitzu miragle behema, or they were somehow squirted. I think that would be the translation. Somehow an animal passed by, the feet of the animal somehow squirted, Ilan, would be the word? Nitzu, from their feet, they somehow got squirted out, That would be kosher. So hamshocha, the gimologim, will be al gabi karka is okay, and so is nitzur miragla behema. Yeshom the ragla behema kedin regla odom. That they say the ragle of an animal, the feet of an animal are the same like the regla of an odom, and therefore b'shneim eno kosher. And the two of them it would not be kosher. Elo behevir al gabi karka the havekam shocha, unless you somehow got him to flow over the surface of the ground for a little bit of a distance, and that would be hamshocha, that would be okay.
When he says,
Yeah.
does that have to go through, or just knock over the bucket?
No, knock over the bucket. Or in the case here, he brought him with the hands and he just did not directly pour them into the mikveh.
No, the
Right.
thing is to literally physically go through yours.
Right.
Or go through, or whether I can leave the bucket and just knock over the bucket and let it flow. There's a big difference.
Well, sure. So
So just knocking it over.
yeah.
No.
So that's what he wants to say here, that the hamshocha would be better according to some. Ragle behema is just like ragle adam, but it's not good enough. It will only be good if later on somehow you were able to bring it through hamshocha. Avaloi benitzu, but not through nitzu. And I like Siman Zasif Lametes that he explains this concept again, if that were to happen. But hamshocha in itself is a valid concept. And it can be helpful sometimes, especially when you're doing some mind shoving that can be repaired through this. All right, Mr. Hashem will continue next.